Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals. Ozcast.
Hello and welcome back to The Nest on what has been a wonderful week for the Eagles. It was a big game, Drew Jones, that we were a little bit apprehensive about, but 5 minutes in, we were sitting back, smiling, relaxing, cigars out and enjoying the boys doing what the boys do best, and that is rolling a big side at home for 4 big points. Welcome to The Nest for another week, everyone. That was great, wasn't it?
Garby, that's about as good as it gets outside of a finals victory and probably a derby win. As a fan of any team, to be able to sit back, relax and enjoy watching your team play really well. And especially for, there'd be a few West Coast fans out there on Saturday night who had a couple of beers in the afternoon and could really settle in and enjoy on Saturday night. And then I rewatched the game on Sunday because why not? We played that well. So the first half was amazing. And it's not just about winning and winning well, but we were playing great football, taking high marks, kicking great goals, had everything that you could want as far as a recipe goes for an entertaining game of footy for us. So we make a statement, Garby. They've been basically top of the ladder, Port Adelaide, for the last 25 weeks, only just missed out on playing in the grand final last season. And they've given us, a couple of hidings in sort of recent history. So it was good to get one back. And Garby, I'm going to start the podcast with a statement.
Okay.
We're 5th on the ladder right now, 2-1. We will not be lower than 5th on the ladder for the rest of the season.
Wow. That's a massive call.
That is my statement. And that, I think we're moving in the right direction, and I'm really confident about where we're heading.
That's a massive call. Love it. It's one that has got some merit behind it because, as we said a couple of times, the early season draw was the worry for us. We've still got some work to do in the next 2 weeks, St Kilda and then Collingwood, before on paper it opens up a little bit. And although we should beat the Saints, we should beat the Pies on form at the moment. They're not easy games and anything can happen, and we know that. But I tell you what, I was chatting about it with some people over the weekend. It just looks like this group, after the last 2 years, where they've had those mental slip-ups and they've not wasted a couple of seasons, but thrown away great opportunities. They just know with Kennedy in his last 1 to 2 years, although he's playing like he can play for another 5, but we know that won't happen. But 1 to 2 years left for him, 1 to 2 years left for Hearn, Nick Nat, Sheppard, Gaff, all in around the 30 mark. Shuey getting his soft tissue injuries and a few others. It just feels like they know as a group we have got 1 to 2 more big cracks at this, and they just seem to be so switched on at the moment and are starting the season playing with such a wonderful intensity, and our brand is just on point. And that's without, Elliot Yeo, of course, who's our best midfielder, with Tim Kelly probably at their absolute best. So it's exciting right now. I think Port got a shock. They had 2 easy games. It was almost pre-season for them in the first 2 weeks, North and then Essendon, and they probably felt good about themselves. And then you come up against a juggernaut team and they got shocked within 5 minutes and they couldn't recover. And it was like their season started on the weekend, and we just woke them up in a big way. Our brand's so strong. I mean, when Nick's doing what he's doing in the middle, it's very hard for teams to obviously get the ball off us there. Our defence is functioning in such a good way. After that first half against Gold Coast, it's gone to another level. And our forward line is just irresistible at the moment, led by JK. Darling's had a wonderful start to the season. And then Flying, when he's taken those grabs, what a great Eagles moment that was. Of all the marks he's taken, it's hard to separate them, but that could be the best. And then you have the Optus Stadium crowd up and about and shouting. It just felt like a great Eagles moment. Is that the best grab he's taken? The Max Gawn one in the goal square maybe edges it, but, geez, it's got fair claims.
Yeah. He's putting together a pretty good highlights reel for a bloke who's only played 50 games. I think the Gorn one still is the best. And the most exciting thing, well, one of the most exciting things is that he's starting to put together this catalogue that's going to rival Jeremy Howe. So we've probably got the two best high flyers of all time playing right now. And Howe's just starting to lose the spring a little bit. So Liam's ready to take that mantle. Do you remember the one he took against Port Adelaide over there? It was in the last quarter, I reckon, when they got a couple of injuries and we battled back from a long way down and McGovern ends up kicking the goal after the siren. But Liam Ryan, people almost forget probably because of what McGovern did, that he took a big hanger and slotted one from 50. That was a really impactful moment because the game was on the line. And it felt like that on Saturday, where it's massive for the crowd, for the team, making a statement, and then to hold on to one of those hangers, which he's been threatening to do. He had, 3 cracks at it against the Dogs last week. Massive. And sometimes we're blessed as West Coast fans. We've had a lot of very good players play for our football club. And at the moment, Liam Ryan is putting together, a career highlights reel that's going to match just about anyone's. But fully agree with what you're saying about the brand. Yeah. I was chatting to Nick Del Santo earlier, just a little name drop for you, and he said, I didn't watch the West Coast game, I just watched it on KO. And I said, look, do yourself a favour, if you get a chance, just watch the first half, because there's periods of the game where, let's say we lost the clearance or we halved the clearance, we would eventually mark the ball down back. Either Barras, McGovern, Sheppard or Hearn would take the intercept. And then Port Adelaide wouldn't see the ball for like 4 minutes. We'd, hit those little kicks, the 45s, move the ball well, and we'd kick a goal. And then we'd win the next clearance, go forward, lock it in the forward half, kick another goal. Like that, whatever Port Adelaide did, we had the method. So it was either we'd win the clearance, lock it in the front half, or lose the clearance, win it back in defensive 50 and then move the ball forward. So when everything's working for you, like it did in that game against Collingwood last season, I mean, I don't think there's a team that can go with West Coast when they're playing that way, particularly at Optus Stadium. But the brand is transferable to Marvel, to the MCG, and if it's dry in the north. So that's a really good sign for us. I thought Nick Nat, again, was amazing. He won 26 hitouts, but almost every time they were going down someone's throat, they were creating a clearance. Scott Lycett's one of the best stopping ruckman in the league, so it was always going to be a big test for him, but Nick Nat was great. It was great to see Gaff bounce back, Garby. I'm sure you would have been happy in your fantasy team. You got 150-odd, 36 touches. And Simo batted away those questions in the post-match. Like there's I think it's the Sunday Times reporter sort of came at him as he had done earlier in the week at the press conference and was like, what did you change? Are you happy for him? And Simo's like, he just did his job. We didn't change a thing, yada, yada. There's no doubt he played a slightly different role because he got 20 more possessions that he had in the previous weeks.
Yeah. Because have you seen the images of Simo talking to Gaff?
Yeah, they're good.
It seems like it was what's the best way to describe it? I don't want to say heated, but a
robust,
vibrant conversation.
Yeah.
Seems like there was a bit of to and fro. And Gaffy did look a little bit frustrated. So I'm not sure it was simply a catch-up. I think Simo was playing it down a little bit. I think Simo was trying to get to the bottom of maybe what's not quite working for Gaffy, and he just looked a bit frustrated at what's not working, and he worked through it this week, and it was great. Funnily, on my fantasy team, I actually traded him this week, so I feel incredibly guilty. It's not as if I was in a blasphemic way towards the Eagles. I did get Dom Sheed in return, who's been flying, and he's still got a ton, but Gaffy at 154. So, yeah, it hurt me on the weekend, but, the positives of him returning to form outweigh the negatives of me trading him out of his team. But I've gone a week early, that's for sure, and that's a mistake that I have to live with all season long because it looks like he's back to his best. Just quickly, I love the Liam Ryan interview after the game. Like, he's not going to win any public speaking awards, let's be honest. It's not his go. He probably hates doing it, but he has to now that he's a superstar of the comp. But he just was so honest afterwards, like, well, I'm not going to stand there like a statue. If the ball's there to be jumped at, I'm going to do it and jump on people's heads. It was like the most honest response because he just doesn't really feel comfortable in front of the camera, but it provided an entertaining answer, which is, the way it goes. One of the big stories out of the game for us, Drewy, the big night for Jared Brander. Just huge.
Yeah, I like
he comes into the game under so much pressure and he plays the exact game that we want and need him to, and that is go into the midfield, go forward. You're a hybrid player. Yes, that means you're out of position at times and you're swapping and interchanging. But when you do it well, wow, you're a hard player to match up on, and you give us such a dangerous option. And he was fantastic. So what a great call that was by the match committee.
Yeah, it gave me a lot of joy, actually, to watch him play really well. He looked a bit cleaner than we've seen him previously, no fumbling, looked a bit more sure of himself. Great to see him kick that goal, and almost every player got to him. It was really great. And actually what really added to it was Hamish McLaughlin knowing a bit about Brander's story, and the fact that he played for the Geelong Falcons, I think, probably helps because Hamish is from down that way. So he's well established in that area. He's from Adelaide. But, you know, kudos to Hamish for knowing Brander's backstory. And I like the fact that I think, did we both tweet from the Nest account after he kicked that goal?
We probably need to come up with some sort of format for that.
Yeah, but it probably just,
in the moment.
If anything, it probably just illustrates the fact that we are echoing West Coast fans' feelings on this. Like the fact that Brander playing well, that was a really big thing for us. And I think, it's a massive positive we can take out of the game, and it actually gives us a couple of options going forward. So it's probably worth discussing just while we're here, that Luke Shuey's obviously done his hamstring. The club say 3 to 4 weeks, probably. He played about 60 minutes, which is amazing. He had 28 disposals, 8 clearances. Straight away, it was like a duck to water, and you're like, oh, like that's what we've been missing. Like that was that's the Norm Smith medal winning Luke Shuey that we saw on the weekend for 60 minutes. So for him to do his hammy was devastating.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks, really. The positive is we've started the season really well, and we feel as if we can get through the next month still in a pretty good place without him. But, you know, him and Yo in the team, and we're just about premiership favourites. You know, that's the difference that he makes. So, yeah, it's a shame. The worry is not so much that he's out for the next month. That is obviously a massive blow. The worry is that this keeps reoccurring. The worry is that he's had 3 hamstrings now in the space of a full season, I guess, if you add last season into this one. That's the worry, and that it could keep happening, and that he plays maybe within himself a little bit because he's scared of it, and that's when you start to get into a bit of trouble as a player. So hopefully that's not the case, but that would be the concern for him and everyone, that it's something that's going to keep happening, and that's a massive blow if it does go that way, but hopefully not. So who comes in? Who comes in for Shuey and slots into the midfield? For me, it's just Xavier O'Neill. That probably just comes straight in. He was unlucky to miss out. What about you, mate? Who do you think is the replacement for Luke on the ball?
So I've posed this question to the Nest fans and listeners on Twitter, and I sort of combined it into doing an article about it on the Patreon. So I've called it the Luke Shuey conundrum. So there's a few layers to this, Garby. So in terms of who comes in, I've laid out a couple of options. Xavier O'Neill was the overwhelming choice by the people who responded on social media, because he did start the season relatively well, squeezed out because Shuey comes back, and then O'Neill had a big game in the reserves, had about 30 possessions playing in the midfield. So that makes a lot of sense, but I've got some other options for you. One of those is to probably bump up Liam Duggan's midfield minutes into, real full-time on the ball, at all times, maybe extra game time, and then probably roll Jared Brander through as an inside mid as well. And then you can think, well, that's how maybe we get Alex Witherden into the team. So that's one option. Maybe you give Tom Cole some reps on the wing or, whatever. Then there's probably another one, if you wanted to bring Archie in, who was originally in the team and he's fit to play, you could bring Archie, or you could go Langdon, and then you push Jermaine Jones and Brander into the midfield mix. And then Zane True is one that gets a little bit of buzz online, who was our rookie draft guy playing in the Waffle. He had 24 disposals and 10 tackles in the reserves on the weekend. He's a bit of a tougher nut, an inside, slightly bigger body, so he offers more physicality probably than Xavier O'Neill. Whether they would want that against, Zach Jones and Jack Steele in, St Kilda's midfield, sort of big boys, a senior, not a senior body, but a bigger body. Whether they want that, he's an option for them. And then the real outside flyer is Isaiah Winder, who kicked 5 goals in the twos. I think it's probably a bit too early for him, but a few people did mention that he had played well, and whether a 5-goal performance, is the way that you go. I think Xavier O'Neill is probably the man that comes in, Garby, but just on Shuey, I think we're getting to a point where, he missed essentially 2 weeks with his last hamstring before coming back. I don't think you can do that with Shuey now. He probably needs that extra week, or maybe he has to play a half in the waffle to sort of prove that he can get through. And then Simo even floated the idea of a positional change, or do they look at other training options with him? So they're obviously going to look at all options and understand why this keeps going wrong for him.
Yeah.
If you had to play him outside the midfield, where do you think you'd do it?
Half forward, I guess, but you saw how he played on the weekend. They've just got to find a way to get him right and get him in the middle, because he's still so dynamic, one of the best midfielders in the comp. So, half forward, but I don't know if that really changes too much the way you play half forward now. You still have to chase and tackle and harass, and I don't know if it makes it any easier on your body. So they just got to find a way to get it right. Yeah, I think O'Neill comes in. Winder kicking 5 goals, great, but I think it's probably too early for him. Good to see Nathan Vardy kick 4, so he gets dropped but goes back with a good attitude. It's probably the right call to drop him and play Allen in the ruck, and it probably stays that way for a little bit more, especially with the Saints and their ruck problems this week. But great to see him go back with the right attitude and kick 4. Does Petch stay in the team? I thought he was a bit lucky to come back in, and it was probably because it was Port and they're such a quick side that he gets back in. Again, didn't do anything dramatic. Is he hanging on to his spot this week, do we think?
Yeah, it's going to be close. I wonder if they brought in Petruccelli because he'd kicked the bag of goals against Port Adelaide previously, and maybe they thought, that was a positive kind of indicator or vibe to get him back in the side. I thought his pre-season was good. So, if they're justifying his selection by what they saw in the pre-season, then I can understand that. But he's not bringing a huge amount to the table. There's guys on the outside looking in who, they could shuffle the deck or bring Langdon back in, or do they find a way to squeeze Witherden into the team? I don't know, but he's not bringing a lot to the table for us at the moment, is he?
Witherden was reported in the waffle. If he gets suspended, do we know the outcome of that yet? And if he gets suspended, he can't play AFL, can he?
No, he can't.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the outcome of that was, but I know he was reported. So maybe that's one we have to watch.
Well, do you want to Google? Do you want to Google that while I go through the votes for this week?
I'll have a look while you go through the votes, and then we'll touch on, just to give a bit of a plug for the rest of the rundown. So Brad Sheppard's 200th this week. We'll pay tribute to him. We'll touch on another milestone for Shannon Hearn, which is an enormous one that's looming. The St Kilda game coming up. We'll analyse that. But let's get into the votes. Drew's compiled all of yours. Thanks so much again for being so active on Twitter. Give us the aggregate, Drewy, and that includes, should we do our votes first? You go through yours. I'll Google Alex Witherden. Then I'll give you mine, and then we'll go through the aggregate with all our listeners.
Yeah, so my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 from the game, I gave Luke Shuey 5. Thought he was superb, especially when the game was on the line. Nick Nat, I've given 4. I think, again, very effectual in the midfield. Like at the moment, all the stats that Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy are racking up, now they look great on paper, but I still think Nick's the most influential around the centre bounce. Like Brodie Grundy had an incredible game for Collingwood, but they end up losing. And that gives you an idea of the difference between having a ruckman in a winning team and just a ruckman with big numbers. Gaffey, I've given 3 for his 36. I thought Tim Kelly was great again, really silky smooth in the front half. And then I gave 1 to Jack Darling. I thought he was, it's almost a reward for his first 3 weeks. He's been really consistent to start the season. Underrated Jack Darling. He's a super, super player. good kick for goal, vice grip, and he's tough as nails. I've loved what he's done for us this season.
He started so well. A reprimand for Witherden with an early guilty plea. I'm sure there are plenty of listeners who knew that already who are like shaking their head. Boys, you're slow to the news. We are. We're a day slow, but we've got it now. So he's free to play this week with an early guilty plea. So maybe he's someone that comes in the mix. That would be exciting. Maybe that strike was a bit of frustration that he's out of the AFL side. So perhaps he's just battling with that at the moment. I gave 5 to Luke Shuey. I just thought when the game was there to be won, he was the best player on the ground. 4 to Nick, who just put on a clinic yet again. I mean, he would have known Scott Lysette knows how he plays, and he's one of these just elite, slightly arrogant players on the field, not off the field, who just likes to teach lessons to people in the right circumstances. He would have lifted for that and thought, I'm just going to take it to another level against a bloke who thinks he'll know how to play me. And he just absolutely torched him. So 4 to Nick, who I thought just gave us such dominance in the middle. 3 to JK, he was brilliant up forward again. 2 to Gaff for the way he worked through the game and just was such a strong runner for us and helped us control the contest. And then 1 to Kelly, who I thought was brilliant when the game was there to be won as well. Barras unlucky. Darling unlucky. He's having a wonderful start to the season and is probably being overlooked because of JK's form and Oscar's first round performance, but he started ever so well. Hearn deserves a mention as well, but I gave the 1 to Kelly for, I think, the way in which he played when the game was there to be won. And let's be honest, our midfield did it all in the early stages and put us in a supreme position. So taking all those votes into account, Drewy, what are the Nest 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for this week?
So Shuey got maximum votes from 14 out of 16 who got involved. So 77 for Shuey, runaway vote getter with the 5. And then Nick Nat with 54 overall, he gets 4 votes. Gaff, 42 overall, gets 3. And then we go, what's that? Barras got 32. So he gets 2 votes and then 1 vote for Tim Kelly.
Okay, so looking at the overall then, that would make it, as we look at the leaderboard, that would put Nick Natanui and Tim Kelly on top on 7 at the top of the leaderboard. And they are the leaders for the medal at the moment. And in fact, it's a 3-way lead. Barras, Nick Nat, Kelly, all of them on 7 votes for the Nest medal. So Barras, Nick Nat and Tim Kelly leading the Nest medal on 7 votes. So it's a tight start to the season, plenty of options. We're not exactly searching for votes, which we would have been doing at this time last year, I think. Yeah. There's plenty of options for us, which is great. Amazing Brad Sheppard hasn't had a vote. I mean, this time last year, he was probably our best player, leading our best and fairest, manages to nab an All-Australian Guernsey. He's playing well again, but it's just other guys taking the headlines from him. But he plays game 200 this week, Drewy. So we thought we would pay tribute to a guy who's just been a warrior for so long, Brad Sheppard. And his story is really interesting, isn't he? From a guy who was the number 7 pick who failed to convince early on and spent 2 or 3 years at least working his way into the team, and now is one of the best halfbacks to have ever played for the club. And that's saying something when you consider the players we've had go through.
Yeah, my memories of Sheppard early days were that perhaps the club reached a little high for him initially because he was a WA boy. We were probably still going through the post-Judd leaving sort of hangover where we didn't want to draft Eastern States guys. And then we had a really bad year that year where he came into the team. I reckon we might have even won the wooden spoon. And he played a little bit across sort of halfback and maybe some midfield minutes and looked okay for us in a pretty dire year on the field. And then that we had something of a resurgence over the next couple of years, and he probably struggled to get into the team for a while and wasn't doing enough. And then really came into his own when he was forced to play a bit taller when we had those injuries down back. So when Mitch Brown and Mackenzie did their ACLs, basically Schofield and Sheppard had to play as almost key defenders for the early part of that season. And that's when he just took his game to a new level, and they probably realised a bit more of his potential as a really versatile, medium-sized defender. And then he's probably, as he's gotten older, he's probably even gotten better at the rebounding. Skills have always been tidy, great athlete, and, ultimate professional as well. So, popular around the club because of how good a team player he is, but also accomplished player and one of the best medium defenders in the AFL.
Yeah, I remember when we drafted him, there was a chat that it was either Sheppard or Lewis Jetta, who I think went at pick 13 to Sydney, and they were the two players the Eagles were tossing up between Sheppard and Jetta. And for the first 5 years, it was like, why didn't we take Lewis Jetta? What a blunder. How have we done this? In the end, I mean, Sheppard wins out. We get Lewis Jetta anyway. He wins a flag with us anyway, and he's retired, and Shep's still playing wonderful footy. So, worked out well in the end. Yeah, he was meant to be a midfielder, one of those clean user midfielders who's just a supreme kick. And, he gets forced to play half back and ends up being a wonderful defender. And, he's a great user, but he's just so tough at the contest. And I don't think he was ever viewed as being someone who wasn't going to be that way, but that's not what we were pitched when we recruited him. He's ended up being just a superb halfback. And, everyone does from time to time their best Eagles sides of all time. I think I did mine during COVID, and you still can't squeeze him in over McKenna and Worsfold because that's still the all-time half-back line. But you start to think about it now. You start to go, wow, does Brad Sheppard maybe get in? And it's going to be still hard to force that. Maybe he's a back pocket option, but even then with the defenders we've had, it's hard to get into that team. But he's in the conversation, and that's just an incredible thing to be saying for a player who over the first 3-4 years of his career, we weren't sure about if he would actually make it and become that top elite player. And now he is just the most reliable every single week. And the way in which he goes about it as well is just fantastic. A wonderful ambassador and professional for the club. And what a great decision it was to pick him at pick 7 in the end, and game 200 this week. It's a massive one for him.
Yep. So all he needs to complete the career now, Garby, is a flag this year and maybe another All-Australian under his belt. And then that's when he starts getting into the conversation for one of the best Eagles defenders of all time. And he's pretty unlucky to not have a flag. He was having a bloody good year in 2018 before he did his hamstring. And we missed him. Perhaps it would have been a more comfortable day against Collingwood if we had Shep running around. But yeah, great to see that he'll bring up game 200 this week. We know that Shannon Hearn, it's a big day for him as well, but we're going to touch on that a bit more next week because it probably deserves clear air. What are your thoughts on the St Kilda matchup? Feels like we're getting them at a decent time, although you would expect some sort of response after two pretty poor performances. You would think so, yeah. So game 290 for Shannon Hearn equals Dean Cox's club record. But I reckon the Eagles are saying, we'll mention it this week, but next week at home against Collingwood, that's Shannon Hearn's celebration week. Even if you don't like it, Bunga, we know you like to keep a low profile. Yeah. This is a massive moment, and it's going to be all about him leading into that one. So that's probably the best way to play it, especially with Shep having 200 this week. He can have all the attention. Yeah, I mean, they're going to come out breathing fire. They're going to get hammered all week. They're a top 8 chance in a big way. 2 weeks ago, they were thought of as a potential top 4 team. Yeah, they're undermanned, but they're going to come out and try and prove a point. I just think we'll have too much quality for them, especially with Nick Natanui against what will be a weak ruck division for them. Ryder's back training, but he's not going to play. If they play Marshall, they're probably playing him a week earlier than they would have liked. So Nick can dominate in that sense. And I think we'll have too much firepower for them up forward, and we'll be able to hold them out back. Membry's playing really well, so they'll have to shut him down. We know that King is going to be dangerous like he always is, but Membry's the main one. Otherwise, once they come out and start playing with that, we've got a point to prove emotion. Once that starts to die down, we should just have far too much quality, you would think. Yeah, I agree. I could see this being tight early, but the quality telling over the length of the match. It's going to be hard for them to blunt what's an in-form midfield group despite missing now Shuey and Yo, but Kelly, Sheed and now Gaff are hitting their straps, and if we can get bits and bobs from elsewhere. Jack Redden's playing well. Yeah, Redden was good last week. And he started the season pretty well. He looks fit, as does Kelly. They both look they're moving really well. And then, our forwards are in great form. Oscar Allen, just a watch on that shoulder, whether he was carrying that a little bit. Obviously, he had to do that ruck work. Whether Vardy gets a look in potentially, we'll have to wait and see. But, we play Marvel Stadium fairly well. We've won 4 of our last 5 there. Probably should have beaten the Dogs, but we lost to a pretty good team. It's a big game for us. we can lock this one away. Then we've got Collingwood and Geelong. And if we can split those, then that puts us at, worst case 4-2, looking really good. So it's a big game, Marvel Stadium. I'll be in the crowd. Pretty excited to see us play live again because it's right now watching West Coast is just about the best show in the league.
Yeah, I mean, we should get it done. We should get it done. I mean, they're a quick team and they can get us on the outside a bit with some of their players there, but really we should have too much quality. So hopefully that is the case, and then we can come back and hopefully make amends against the Pies the week after, and then the draw opens up for us to really set ourselves for, what will hopefully be a top 4 finish this season. But let's just get this one done. It's just a great opportunity to build on what's been a super start. So big opportunity, and I think one that we should be able to capitalise on. And with the forward line playing as well as it is, especially with Jack Darling, really combining well, and with Kennedy and Allen and Ryan and Jones and all those players down there, we've just got so many weapons that if one's down, the other one can jump up. So, yeah, we should get it done. Hopefully we do, and that'll be a wonderful way to start the campaign.
Absolutely, Garby. What else you got for me? Are we done for the week?
One more thing, which I did see today, the AFL just tweeted it. So on this day, 19 years ago exactly, a certain C. Judd debuted in the AFL for the West Coast Eagles, round 2 against Collingwood at the MCG. I mean, every Eagles fan, I think, remembers where they were and their emotions while watching that, because we just knew we had a superstar. And I remember Mick Malthouse's comment after the game. He was coaching the Pies. They beat us by a point. Brodie Holland kicked 8 goals out of his backside. It was one of those, it was that period where we couldn't stop a small forward. Like, we had Wirra playing down there, but he played loose, and they would just put the small forward on him, and more often than not, they would get away from us. It happened a lot, I remember, around that era. We just couldn't stop a small forward. And Brodie Holland has the game of his life and kicks 8 and we lose by a point. But Malthouse said afterwards about Judd, he's like, they found another one, haven't they? Like the Eagles, and he knew all about the Eagles players coming through. He'd coached us a couple of years before, and he's like, they found another one. And from there on, the rest is history. Arguably, in my opinion, pound for pound, the best player to have ever worn the Eagles jumper. Just on pure ability, and 19 years ago to the day, he wore it for the very first time.
Also, some news coming today, Dom Sheed about to sign a new contract as well till 2025. He was going to be a free agent at the end of the season, although I don't think there was too much danger of Sheed leaving. And, he's left an indelible mark on the football club, and hopefully there's many more big moments to come.
I hope he just plays with the same passion that he's playing with now that he's got the contract. That's always the worry. Players get a new contract and they relax a little bit. 4-year deal, security. Let's just hope he maintains the same level. I'm sure he will. Adam Simpson will obviously keep him on notice, but that's always a concern when a player signs a new deal, that it's the human nature to sometimes relax when you're a bit more secure. So hopefully he doesn't, because he's had a wonderful start to the season. He's playing such good footy. So, yeah, that's great news that we've locked him up as well. I also noticed some of the reports during the week that Oscar Allen, there's rival clubs circling him. I mean, there's a fat chance of him leaving, of course. The Eagles are not going to let a West Australian of his quality leave the club. He's arguably our next captain, certainly in the mix. And might just be...
He's the king of WA. He's the new king of WA. He's going to dominate... He's going to dominate nightclubs for the next 10 years if he wants to.
I get the feeling it's not Oscar's go, though. He seems like a clean skin. He seems like he's
but if he wanted to.
Home with a nice book and a cup of tea. I wonder if it's just his agent playing funny buggers to drive up the price. Probably the case.
Give him whatever he wants. We've got to lock him away. Give him a 10-year contract.
Yeah, I reckon Trevor Nisbet's taken a photo of that story, sent it to Oscar Allen's agent and gone, you really think this is going to work? He's not going anywhere. Let's be sensible here. We know these games. We've seen them all before.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Garby, thanks for that. Get on the Patreon as well. I'm trying to churn out as much as I can, some free stuff and some paywall content as well, $4 a month. Get involved because it's a big season. If you want... you want to be immersing yourself in West Coast right now because we're playing great footy. We're in the premiership window. So, get around the nest. We're rolling out as much as we can for you.
And we're enjoying it. Yeah, thanks for all your contributions. Sign up to the Patreon. It's worth it. And keep talking to us on Twitter and having that dialogue. We really enjoy it. And let's get pumped up for Saturday and hopefully make it 3-1 and put ourselves in a really strong position against the Saints. Thanks, Drewy. Have a good week, mate.
Thanks, Garby. Take care, everyone.
Enjoy the game. Cheers.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.